Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to the Bridge for Cities Business Roundtable, organized with the support of our partners, AIG, Wood Group, and the Institute for Future Cities at the University of Strathclyde. Partnerships and the role of the private sector for ensuring a sustainable economic recovery and climate action have been highlighted as a crucial means by many of our participating mayors throughout the day. It is therefore important that we explore how the public and the private sector can actually cooperate in urban contexts. And this is precisely what our Business Roundtable will try to achieve by bringing together representatives from both cities and from the private sector. Without further ado, I now have the pleasure to hand over to Mr. Paul Di Paola, Vice President for Strategy and Innovation at AIG, who will be our moderator. Paul, over to you.
Hello, my name is Paul Di Paola, and I'm with American International Group. I'd like to welcome you today to our Business Roundtable, Connecting Cities in the Pursuit of Climate Goals. We have a terrific group of panelists who will share what they have been learning and what we've been learning together about how to partner in the spirit of SDG 17 to achieve our climate goals. We see this as a unique opportunity to accelerate solutions and to extend these partnerships with your help. So we look forward to the discussion today and beyond the panel. We'd like to start today with a welcome message from Hiroshi Kuniyoshi, Deputy to the Director General of UNIDO, who will discuss the role of cities in achieving the SDGs, as well as the importance of public-private partnerships. DDG Hiroshi, thank you very much for participating, and I turn the floor over to you.
Thank you for your kind introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Bridge for Cities 2021 Business Roundtable. We have had a successful day thus far, learning from mayors from all over the world about the concrete actions for green and inclusive recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic at the city level. During the mayors' roundtables, city leaders emphasized building strong partnerships with national governments, international organizations, civil society, and the business sector. Partnerships, particularly with the business sector, will be critical as we move forward to overcome the COVID-19 crisis and ensure a greener recovery. The 2030 Agenda and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, explicitly acknowledge the vital role of cities in the pursuit of sustainable development. In particular, Goal 11 aims to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. However, the role of cities is central to the implementation of the entire 2030 Agenda, as every SDG target eventually requires local action. The COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated this process. Cities have taken the lead in designing responses, pushing for fast recovery, developing innovative solutions, and taking climate action. The business sector has played an essential role in this process. Its role must continue if we want our cities to be inclusive, sustainable, and resilient. We had several excellent examples during the previous roundtables, but allow me to elaborate more on this topic from UNIDO's point of view. At UNIDO, we value collaboration with the private sector to deliver technical assistance to our member states. In particular, public-private partnerships supported by UNIDO have proven to be very effective in cities. Our Sustainable Cities program helps cities to include environmental resilience in their development plans. The program would not have been so successful without the involvement of the private sector through public-private partnership modalities. Our partnerships have linked municipalities with solution providers to tackle pressing challenges, notably in the field of electric mobility. Electric mobility is a fundamental tool to curb pollution that requires investments of a magnitude that the public sector alone cannot shoulder. By some estimates, the global need for urban infrastructure investment amounts to over $4.5 trillion per year. Up to 25% of this amount is required to make this infrastructure climate resilient. A significant proportion of this investment demand comes from cities in the developing world, which remains at the core of UNIDO's technical assistance. Therefore, upscaling joint action to meet this demand is more imperative than ever. It is clear then that cities are at the heart of the SDGs and will be the engine for global economic recovery. At the same time, cities, as significant contributors to pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, need to act fast and ensure climate resilience. Among other guests, I am particularly pleased to see Ms. Susan Atkin, leader of Glasgow City Council, the host city of COP26. We all look forward to this global gathering that must accelerate action towards the goals of the Paris Agreement and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Lastly, I would like to thank and extend our sincere gratitude to AIG, WOOD, and the Institute for Future Cities at the University of Strathclyde for co-organizing and supporting this important session. We look forward to the outcomes and recommendations emanating from this session. Thank you.
Thank you, DDG Hiroshi, for such an inspiring discussion. It seems we have a great opportunity to partner together on our goals, and the Mayor's Roundtable you discussed seems to have been very fruitful. I now have the honor of introducing Susan Aitken, leader of the Glasgow City Council, who will discuss her experience with the City of Glasgow in partnering with the spirit of SDG 17. Thank you for joining us, Susan, and sharing your experience.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, DDG Hiroshi. It's a pleasure to be part of this roundtable. And on Glasgow's road to COP26, we've often said that our city is an ideal host for COP. We have a historic pertinence given our role as a cradle of the first industrial revolution and its impact on our climate over the past 2 centuries. And also the typicality of our post-industrial challenges are shared by cities across the planet. In many ways, we are a template for cities in transition to decarbonisation. One aspect that perhaps isn't promoted as it should be, but which is a critical element to our ambitions and achievements, is Glasgow's track record and willingness to partner in the pursuit of solutions to our challenges. The Sustainable Development Goals drive much of what we do in the city, and this collaboration and partnership is a critical element of that. We've long recognised that we can't shape city policy or its delivery in municipal isolation. Neither the city council or indeed government at any level is able to deliver everything. And addressing that has meant nurturing a culture that brings together political leadership, business, academia, and civil society to better shape and inform policy that is required by a modern city, one that can respond to emerging trends and opportunities, quickly identify gaps, and better promote Glasgow and our needs. So in a relatively short period of time, that Team Glasgow partnership has moved beyond aspiration to simply being how we do things. And in particular, that was accelerated during the global pandemic and the need to come together to respond quickly and effectively to challenges that we found ourselves facing so unexpectedly. The solutions to Glasgow's long-standing and emerging social and economic challenges are being found in collaboration. This has become normal politics now, and it's mainstreamed in all of our relationships. As we enter this critical decade for the future of the planet, we also take that approach into our response to the climate emergency. The City Council may be the facilitator or the enabler. We have the convening power and the democratic legitimacy, but the solutions are delivered in collaboration. Across Glasgow, organisations and businesses of all kinds have been striving to develop their net zero and climate resilience strategies as the city seeks to collectively deliver our target of becoming carbon neutral by 2030. And we've taken that flourishing culture of collaboration into this agenda through our Sustainable Glasgow partnership. And Sustainable Glasgow brings together local and national government, our universities, energy firms, our Chamber of Commerce, and our National Health Service to tackle the climate emergency with new and innovative solutions. It takes us out of our individual areas of expertise and allows us to recognise our interdependencies, our shared challenges, and to find joint solutions. Membership is drawn from the same partners who helped to shape our policies on well-being through to our response to the pandemic. And on these issues of our times, Glasgow continues to align and face the same direction across a wide range of partners. A source of continuing frustration sometimes is that a lot of the discussion about the climate emergency is either pitched in isolation or is very narrow in scope. And one case in point is the narrative that frames climate solutions as being something that comes from government, whether that's national or local, or which is for government to deliver alone. Certainly here in Glasgow, local government has the necessary political drive and determination and the capacity to foster relationships. But we also need innovators and facilitators to help us create the foundations and the infrastructure for change. Just 2 years ago, I shared a stage with the Chief Executive of Scottish Power to make this point, that all cities need private investment and private expertise to create the infrastructure for change and fuel the need to change. Change at government level can sometimes be incremental, sometimes with good reason, but the demands of the climate emergency require us to deliver change at a pace with which government, either at national or local level, isn't always overly familiar. It does require that innovative approach to relationships and partnership building as much as it will rely on technological and scientific innovation. An area where this is perhaps most obvious for us in Glasgow right now is in the financing of transition. The big question about how cities like ours are going to pay for all of this. It's another area where we've become acutely aware that government alone cannot fund or deliver this. So we've sought to ensure that Glasgow is at the forefront of conversations in the UK around the financing of our transition to net zero. In recent months, we've joined colleagues from Open Society Foundations, the World Economic Forum, International Development, other UK cities, the financial sector and philanthropic organisations to discuss the challenges and opportunities around COP and the financing of the climate transition. This has the potential to be the most critical agenda in the coming years, and I want my city, Glasgow, to be at its forefront. How we connect local democracy and place-based solutions with global finance and regulatory frameworks is a challenge, and it's something that we've not dealt with before at the pace and scale that we're going to have to do to respond to the climate emergency. Few cities have experienced this in the modern era. For me, it's been extremely helpful, and I've been delighted to take part on the board of the fairly newly established UK Cities Climate Investment Commission, which will aim to address the deficit of poorly developed pathways, help to mobilise finance and to drive investment into low and net zero carbon projects. By bringing the plans of different cities together, we can present investment propositions at the scale and volume that are much more attractive to investors. And by engaging with business and the private sector, it can also help us to better understand and address the opportunities and challenges that they face when they're exploring where and how to invest, sometimes double-digit billions, in relatively untested technologies in a fast-moving environment. I'll round off with making some comments about how my city is going to innovate and collaborate, how we're going to step up our innovation and collaboration beyond where we ever have before through Glasgow's Green Deal. Delivered in partnership with business, with government, with universities, colleges and communities, our Green Deal roadmap in its broadest terms will put in place the frameworks required to bring forward the solutions to the climate emergency at scale and pace. It will instill change and innovation within our systems, policies, investment choices and institutions to deliver action in line with climate science. And it will scale up investment in climate action in Glasgow into the billions, both directly by the city and in partnership with national governments and with business. A core element of our Green Deal is our Green Print for Investment, which is a prospectus spanning £30 billion worth of investments and development opportunities, which we've invited investors across the globe to open discussions with us on. The Green Print underscores the connectivity between our overlapping priorities: reducing emissions, adapting to and mitigating climate change, modernising the systems on which cities like Glasgow depend, and addressing social challenges, whether it be fuel poverty to poor transport connections, all while stimulating our recovery from COVID and the wider city economy. Our plans include a £10 billion retrofit of hundreds of thousands of homes across our city region, utilising our river, the Clyde, to power new district heating networks, capping the motorway which runs through the heart of Glasgow to reduce air pollution, connect the city and create new high quality public realm, and improve connectivity across the city region with a Glasgow metro. The success of COP26 will be measured, at least in part, by how cities are going to be enabled to take the practical steps necessary to secure the future of our planet. And of course, in less than a month's time now, those gathering in Glasgow will include investors. Our Green Print puts Glasgow at the vanguard of transition discussions, a ready and willing partner for investment and change, and a template for other cities making the same transition as us and getting themselves into that space of wondering how to mobilise the billions of pounds of finance that they'll also need to deliver their net zero transitions. We believe that as a city of COP, we've got a responsibility to be a demonstrator for where the solutions for sustainability can be found. But we also know that partnership and collaboration with our peer cities around the world will be absolutely crucial to working together to achieve what we have to do collectively, not just as individual administrations, but as an entire planet. Thanks very much for listening.
Oh, thank you, Susan, for a great discussion. We are excited to learn more about the Glasgow Green Deal roadmap. It sounds like a wonderful, promising plan. We'd now like to introduce Dr. Richard Bellingham, who is the Director of the Institute for Future Cities at the University of Strathclyde. Richard will facilitate a discussion with several of our partner cities to discuss successful public-private partnerships and collaborations. Richard, thank you and the team for joining us, and I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Paul. I'm delighted to be joined here today by some of our partner cities who are working with us to create and enhance resilience and sustainability strategies. I'm joined by John Chomey, the Chief Executive Officer of Lilongwe City Council, Gavin Slater, Head of Sustainability at Glasgow City Council, and Ilaria Giuliani, Deputy Chief Resilience Officer for Milan Municipality. And I'm going to kick off by asking each of our panelists just to give us a little bit of context about their city, because not everyone may know your city as well as you do. So Gavin, could I just ask you to just briefly summarize some of the big sustainability and resilience issues from a Glasgow context? Sorry, Glasgow.
Yep. Sorry, thanks, Richard, thanks. Yes, Glasgow, we have been on a fairly progressive sustainability journey now for the past 10 or 11 years. We first established Sustainable Glasgow, which is our public partnership with some private input as well into dealing with sustainability and climate change. And that initially set a target for us to reduce our CO2 emissions by 2030 by 30%. A target which we actually reached in 2015, 5 years ahead of schedule. And we did that through a number of really interesting and innovative projects in the city, dealing mostly with the sort of key themes around energy provision, heat use in buildings and transport. And if truth be told, we've done a lot of progress, both as a city and as a nation, in terms of decarbonising our energy supply. But we still have a lot of work to do in terms of our heat issues and transport. So as a city, we've made a lot of progress. We're now at some 35% savings. We've set a target to become net zero carbon by 2030, sorry. And we're working solidly on tackling those kind of issues around heat and around transport. We've got a new transport strategy coming in and a significant piece of work just kicking off across the whole city region, looking at how we heat our buildings. So I think fairly common problems, but a fairly progressive attitude towards dealing with them.
Thank you, Gavin. John, could I ask you to do the same from a Lilongwe point of view and just give us some of the main points you would like people to know about Lilongwe's context in terms of sustainability and resilience?
Thank you very much, Richard, and also colleagues. Lilongwe is the capital city of Malawi. Malawi is in southeastern Africa, and it's a small city by global standards. We have about 1.2 million residents in Lilongwe, but it's a city that is growing very fast. It's growing at 3.4% per annum. So essentially, every 10-year period, we are finding that the city is almost doubling in population. Our key resilience and sustainability issues, we have got several of them, but I think the main one is around energy, sustainable energy. We find ourselves in a situation where 60% of the urban population has access to electricity, but only 7% of the population actually use electricity for cooking, which means that about 90% of the city's population use biomass, basically firewood and charcoal. And the implications of this is there has been heavy deforestation in and around the city, and this deforestation is threatening our water sources for the city. It is also resulting in now almost the annual flooding in some parts of the city because of the degradation of the catchment of the rivers that feed into the city. Another issue that we are grappling with in terms of resilience, sustainability, is the issue of how we construct our buildings and our transport systems. They are not green enough, although recently the government has taken measures, and also the city council has taken measures to promote green technologies in construction. But it's still, there is a lot that we need to do in this area, but also in the area of transport, especially public transport, which is very poor and which results in many people having to use private cars. The other issue that is a key issue for us is the issue of waste management, especially solid waste management. The capacity of the city council to manage this waste is overstretched, such that it's not uncommon to get to see waste dumped in places where it should not be dumped. Then we have the issue of poor drainage system across the city. The city receives a lot of rain, but our drainage system is not adequate to be able to take that water to where it is supposed to be taken to. So we have got significant localized flooding, particularly during the rainy season. And finally, I think one of our key issues is that of urban food security. It's not necessarily the lack of food, but how we can make that food to last. There is a lot of post-harvest losses of food because of food handling in our markets, where there are no facilities for prolonging the life of food. So these are the resilience and sustainability issues that the city of Lilongwe is dealing with at the moment. Thank you, Richard.
No, thank you for that, John. And very interesting to hear different contexts for different cities around the world. Ilaria, could you tell us something about the context for sustainability and resilience issues in Milan?
Sorry. Thank you, Richard. Thank you for the invitations. I'm happy to be here and to contribute to the discussion. So just a brief introduction. I'm the Deputy Chief Resilience Officer, as Richard was saying, and together with my boss, we coordinate the activities and the strategies included within the City Resilience Department. It's a new quite new department that has been created back in 2017 after the City of Milan won the 100 Resilient City competition promoted by the Rockefeller Foundation. So we have been here since 2017. We were supposed to be here only for 2 years, but actually I think we have new 5 years in front of us after the mayor won the election 2 weeks ago. We now are part of a new department that has been created in 2019, which is the Environmental and Transition Department. As I said, it's a new department. It's the first time that the City of Milan has a department dedicated only to the topic of environment. So strategies related to climate change, of course, related to sustainability in general. We'll now have a new deputy mayor for the Environmental and Transition Department, the Deputy Mayor Elena Grandi. So we'll see how this department will face this challenge in the next 5 years. Of course, we address several issues, different topics, different strategies. I would like to mention some examples just to give you an overview. In the last 2 years, the City of Milan has been working on the Climate and Air Plan together with the collaboration of C40. So we have been working simultaneously at the same time on the topic of mitigation strategies for climate change, adaptation strategies to climate change, and as well strategy related to the quality of the air. So working at the same time on these 3 levels, overlapping all the different layers in order to give an overview, a comprehensive answer to the challenges all the cities are facing. Then we are working, for instance, on a big forestation plan together with the province. So we are trying to plant 3 million of trees by 2030. The claim is 1 tree for each inhabitant of the province, so 3 million of inhabitants. And we are working on this together with all the big parks located all around the province and the city of Milan. Then, of course, generally speaking, we are working on the topic of nature-based solution on the paving program. We are trying again to face as well the topic of inequality, of social inequalities. So looking at different interventions that can be located as well on the suburban areas in order to have a comprehensive view and a comprehensive strategy for all the city.
Thank you for that, Ilaria. So, I mean, today's big theme, I mean, you've identified some, really important and difficult issues for your cities there. And today's big theme is about partnership and the role of partnership in helping, achieve those objectives and deliver on your goals. So, Gavin, I mean, we've worked together for a while now, and I know that Glasgow has some great examples where you've deployed partnerships successfully to deliver on sustainability and resilience goals. I wonder if you could give us 1 or 2 examples of that.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. I'd be happy to. I guess the first one to mention, as I mentioned it in a very brief introduction, would be Sustainable Glasgow. Sustainable Glasgow was established, as I said, in 2010, and it was a real benchmark moment for the city because it brought together various different stakeholders in partnership with a common goal, and that common goal was to address climate change and sustainability. And through that, we had various different partners, including the Glasgow City Council, of course, but also the Scottish Government, major energy companies, technical universities, academic companies, various different partners, transport companies, government NGOs, all working together with a common goal. And that partnership has continued to develop and flex and change over the last decade. So it's very different now from when you and I both worked on it right back at the start there. The private sector's involvement has changed quite a lot. There was a very keen interest from the private sector at first to get involved, but by virtue of being involved at that almost policy making level, it often created some difficulties around procurement, around them actually getting involved in a lot of the delivery mechanisms thereafter. So they became a sort of slightly a step removed from that, and it now very much is a public sector kind of partnership, but it's still the same universities, the same government organisations, the National Health Service, transport, all working together to achieve our net zero carbon. And it's a great example of what we can achieve, and there are many, many different projects that we have put in place, some of which I can talk about in a little bit of detail, but that have taken us some distance on that journey towards being more resilient and more climate friendly. So if you'd like, I can give you some examples of
I think that'd be great. Yeah, if you could give 1 or 2 specific examples. Yeah.
We as a council, one of our most successful projects of late has been something called the Glasgow Recycling and Renewable Energy Centre, and that was a partnership that was set up when Glasgow City Council realised that its existing waste treatment facilities were out of date and needed severe modernisation to get them up to speed. We started at the time a very innovative procurement approach, which was instead of going out to procure a solution, we went out to procure a partner and went through several years of very innovative dialogue, competitive dialogue with various different companies until we found a company who had developed the kind of solution that we were looking for. And that was a solution that would take waste and process it and use it to create renewable energy. So it was part of the council's 10-year strategy in dealing with waste. And it was also part of our response to dealing with the national landfill ban that's been put in place for 2025. And it really was about supporting that need for a comprehensive solution to waste in the city and moving us towards not only a zero carbon, but a zero waste society dealing with its recycling and landfill. So the plan in the city is quite spectacular. It's a £154 million investment. It's a partnership between the City Council and a company called Viridor. It's a 25-year partnership, and it allows that facility to process almost 200,000 tonnes of residual waste in the city. That's now been operational since 2019, and it's been a long process since about 2012 when we finally got the contract signed on that partnership to actually demolish the old plant and completely build this new facility, which can produce enough renewable electricity for over 22,000 homes, and it reduces carbon by about 90,000 tonnes per year. So, you know, a really good example of how companies can come together, organisations can come together and deliver something that can deliver for the city. So, as I say, that the contracts were dealt with in 2012, the demolition finished in 2014 when the construction started in 2014, and it became operational in 2019. And that really does not only deal with their waste, but it's a very innovative process that does that through, you know, a materials recycling facility and then some anaerobic digestion before going into its final advanced conversion facility and producing that renewable energy. And that plant is, you know, there's further value to be extracted from that as well through partnership, and that solves part of that heat problem that I was talking about in the introduction as well, because there's a huge opportunity to recover heat from that process and then use that to actually heat properties as well. So, you know, it's a really good example of how we can work in an innovative way to bring partners together and to deliver something through private-public partnership. Another example from perhaps a more resilient point of view that's good to give as well is one, it's our Municipal Glasgow Strategic Drainage Partnership, which is really about, you know, in Glasgow, in terms of the effects of climate change, increased precipitation is one of the most obvious and most present threats that we have from climate change. Glasgow's fairly well known for the amount of rain it gets, and that's expected to just continue to increase through climate change. And in 2002, the city worked with several other partners, including Scottish Water, which is a national organisation, the Scottish Environment Protection Agency, Clyde Gateway, which is a regeneration agency within the city, but also across the city region, working with Scottish Enterprise and the Scottish Government, as well as other local authority areas in South Lanarkshire, North Lanarkshire, North Dunbartonshire and Renfrewshire, which are areas which surround the city itself. And you know, this was really about how we could look at not only managing floodwater and water runoff in the city, but doing that across the city region and developing projects across the city region that would allow us to manage that water runoff and not only manage it, but see it also as an asset that would allow us to actually start to direct water away from hard standing areas to create more green and blue infrastructure in the city and the surrounding area to make it a much better place to live for citizens. That's been a very successful partnership, and it's delivered a great number of projects, many projects around sustainable urban drainage, but also strategic tunnelling under the city for redirection of water. One of the sort of most lauded projects is the White Cart Flood Alleviation Scheme, which has won a number of awards and uses the existing river structures to better channel that floodwater. So through the impacts of climate change and increasing our resilience by managing that water in a better way. So those are two examples, perhaps, or three examples of partnership in the city, and there are many more which I can discuss as we go along, but perhaps give another city an opportunity.
No, thank you for that, Gavin. We'll get into a little more detail shortly. But Ilaria, have you got any examples of how Milan has approached partnerships and delivery?
Sure. So first things I want to underline in relation to partnership, I mean, it's more a matter of, let's say, horizontal collaboration within the public administration, but very much of the, let's say, of the work, of the activities we have been doing in the last 4 years since the City Resilience Department has been created was to enhance the collaboration among different departments inside the municipality. This is, I mean, not given for granted within our, I mean, let's say within Italian municipalities. And this is something really we need to push further in order to not work only on our topic, especially if you're working on the topic of resilience and sustainability, which of course are horizontal. Then, as I said before, the City of Milan decided to dedicate a whole department to the environmental transition. So the issue of transition implies the collaboration of all the sectors, all the offices of the municipality. So first thing that we need to underline for us is the fact that we need to create partnership within our offices, first of all. Then we actually start our experience back in 2017. We had to identify the let's say the shock and stresses the city of Milan faces. This was part of the program 100 Resilience City competition, and we decided to do it through a very intense process of stakeholder engagement. So at that time we interviewed several private stakeholders, not only private, even coming from the first sector, in order to understand with them which was their perception of the framework of resilience and how they were promoting and implementing already actions and strategies related to this topic. So at that time, somehow we have been able to, to establish at the very beginning some collaboration, some partnership. Then we have been developing through all over our activities, through all over these 4 years. I mentioned before the forestation program. This is a real example of partnership because we are doing this with the collaboration of the university, especially the Politecnico of Milano, but especially, as I said, with all the parks located all around the city. So the South Park, the North Park, and with all the 130 municipalities that are part of the province. So you need to establish collaboration again with the small municipality next to you, and you need to understand with them which are the common goals, which are the sharing objective, and then work on them very hardly in order to reach the goal of 3 million of trees. Of course, much of the things we do are very much related to the network we are part of. So the Resilient City Network for us is a big framework through which we are able to collaborate, to create partnership with other cities. This partnership and this collaboration, very often it's at the basis of developing, for instance, new project proposal for EU projects. This is a very intense part of the things we do with our city resilient department. And I mentioned before, another example, the climate and air plan. We developed that plan thanks to the collaboration of C40. Again, the sharing experiences, best practice and know-how with other cities, especially if they are located in the same typology of context, can give a very big push to the strategy that the city are developing.
No, thank you for that, Ilaria. That's so that's a different types of partnership in different contexts, and yeah, talking about public partnerships there, and the need to kind of overcome organizational silos. Yeah, I know, and my own background's in government, so I know that can be a very significant issue when you're trying to make progress. John, from a Lilongwe point of view, are there examples of partnerships that you would like to highlight?
Yes, thank you, Richard. Indeed, I have a couple of examples, I think, of some very useful partnerships. I think one of which is being scaled up, not just in our city, but also in other cities across the country. So I think is the first partnership that I want to share is the one that we have around the issue of waste management. Climate change impacts are impacting heavily on the urban poor. Most of the flooding is taking place in areas where the urban poor live. The poor waste management among the urban poor communities. So we decided that our partnerships should not be just partnerships, but they must be pro-poor partnerships. So we began to set up what we call the public private community pro-poor partnerships for service delivery. And we focused on the waste management as one of the services that would go under that partnership, also as a way to empowering communities, as a way to making communities more resilient, but also issues of poverty in those communities, to use these opportunities to actually create wealth, create jobs, and create incomes for the urban poor. So the City Council brought into this partnership the UNDP, UN Habitat, the EU, and some non-governmental organizations, local NGOs, but also our local natural resource university. It's called Lilongwe University of Agriculture and Natural Resources, Luana. And also we brought in the private sector, and one of the key companies in this is called the Four Seasons, which is Malawi's largest horticultural company. So through this partnership, we were able to, because about 70% of our waste is actually organic, and but that waste is collected and is dumped at the dump site. But we said, let's make wealth from the garbage, from the waste. So what we did was to bring these partners together, including the communities as well, the beneficiary communities. Then we had issues of awareness in the communities. We had issues of capacity building of the community members who would be participating in this initiative. So our university played a key role in capacitating these community members, and also they played a key role in documentation, in doing research, especially in the area of compost production. The research helped the communities to actually produce very high quality compost, which would compete with chemical fertilizers on the market. So we were able to set up initially 2 centers where waste was being recycled by community members, mostly poor women and also young people. And with the support that they had from the City Council and from the university, and they were able to start producing outputs from the waste that could now be put on the market. The communities, we also facilitated the signing of an MOU between the communities who are producing this compost and other recyclables, an MOU with the private sector, so that they could have a guaranteed market for their products. And as I speak, this MOU is still in place, and the market for this is actually guaranteed. And we also find that it's not just these companies which have an MOU with the communities, but also there are others, individuals, firms, and so on, who are coming to buy from these women groups. So for us as a City Council, through this partnership, we are trying to reduce the problem of transportation of waste from source to the dump site. If that waste can be recycled, if it can be turned into other uses, then the bills for the City Council of moving this waste are actually reduced. But we're also using this to create jobs, incomes, as self-employment for our urban poor. We're also using this to fight the impacts of climate change, so that we reduce indiscriminate dumping of waste in various places in the city. The second partnership, which I want to share briefly, is what we call Lilongwe Ecological Corridor Initiative. This is a new partnership that started last year, and it is still ongoing. The city of Lilongwe is blessed with some very important natural assets. We have many rivers, and we have an area of total wilderness in the center of the city that we call Lilongwe Nature Sanctuary, where you get all kinds of fauna and flora. And then we also have what we call the National Botanical Gardens in the city of Lilongwe. But these natural assets are under pressure. So as a city council, we have established the partnerships with the various groups, with government departments, with private sector, with non-profit organizations. We also working with the UN so that we can bring these assets together as an ecological corridor and ensure the biodiversity conservation, ensure nature conservation, but also ensure that our public, including school children, have access to these places for awareness and for environmental education. So this initiative is going to result in several key activities. One is we are restoring our rivers, which have been damaged over time through things like sand mining, brick making, cultivation, and so on. So we are now beginning a process of restoring our rivers, restoring our landscapes, but also bringing in a charter to protect better our nature sanctuary. We are working with our partners to build a center for environmental education and awareness right in the nature sanctuary, so that young people, school children can come and appreciate nature within this nature reserve in the middle of our city. We also are going to clean up our rivers, and we are going to establish some public parks along our rivers. Already work on establishing one park is already started with the support of the private sector. So although this initiative is still at the initial stages, but the enthusiasm that is there among the partners and the interest that is coming from others to actually be part of the partnership, I think it gives us the hope that I think we are on the right path, and we can build on these partnerships to really transform our young city. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you for that, John. And so, I mean, we've had great examples there where all the cities are applying partnerships, creating partnerships to tackle issues that are of importance to, the things, important to your people and your businesses and those who live and work and invest there. And I just wanted actually this open question to all of you. I mean, what makes a successful partnership? How do you create a successful partnership? What are the key factors, do you think? Gavin, do you want to come in there?
Yeah. I mean, it's probably been said already, but I think having a very clear and common goal is often key to any kind of partnership. It's imperative that everyone understands what we're trying to achieve in any partnership that we create, and also what everyone's roles and responsibilities are. And I think that's something that when you look back across Sustainable Glasgow, for example, quite often we had the common goal, we knew what we were trying to achieve, but perhaps the roles and responsibilities weren't clearly defined enough, which perhaps led to some inertia in certain times. So, having that common goal, having that clear understanding of what we're trying to achieve, but also having that clear understanding of everybody's roles and responsibilities and what they are contributing to the partnership, I think is fairly key.
Thank you, Gavin. Ilaria, John, do you want to just have any thoughts, offer any thoughts on what makes a successful partnership?
Yes, I think.
Sorry, John. We'll let John go in first. Sorry, Laurie.
Yeah. Okay. I think in our case, maybe there are two issues that I think have been important for our partnership. One is I think from our experience with the other partnerships, partnerships which are built around a project, they don't really work well because they are project based. After the project, the partnership ends and then there is no sustainability. But a partnership should be built around an issue which is not dependent on a project, but an issue which has got to be addressed by all those with a stake in that issue. I think the other thing about our experience is the fact that we've placed communities at the center of these partnerships, and that the community themselves, they are actually part of the partnership. They are not the recipients at all. They're actually players in this partnership. And the good thing about that is that these communities, they actually also act as our watchdogs, always keeping us on our toes. We, the public sector players, and even the private sector players and the NGOs. So we have got communities who are holding us to account for our roles in that partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And Ilaria, your thoughts on how do you create successful partnerships?
Something that came to my mind while Gavin was speaking, when I was studying urban planning here in Milan, they were teaching us that in order to find, good, successful collaboration, successful partnership, maybe, but anyway, somehow sort of agreement with the stakeholder you're dealing with, you need to understand which are the trading zone between you and the people you have in front of you. So you need to understand which are the common goals and work on them in order to understand which can be the benefit for each participant at the table. Benefit can be different, of course, but all the participants can take something out from a collaboration, from a partnership, if we are dealing with sustainability, if we're dealing with environment. So I think the key is to work on this trading zone, push them at the maximum level, and let all the participants, all the stakeholders that are involved understand which can be the benefits for them.
Okay, I think those are excellent points. So what we've heard are points about having common objectives, or it could be complementary objectives, perhaps, sure. and also the need for clarity on the benefits sought, and just being open about, well, different partners are going to probably want different benefits out of this, different types of benefit out of the same initiative. I think that just recognises there are different perspectives, and particularly when we're talking about the private sector and the public sector. Sure. Yes, of course they're coming at it from different angles. In terms of barriers, I mean, in terms of you've all kind of alluded to particular barriers that you've come across in the past, like lack of clarity on roles, perhaps. But any other thoughts on barriers to partnerships and how these can be overcome?
If I can answer to this, the first things that come to my mind is, at least for, let's say, the Italian municipalities, is bureaucracy. Sometimes we need to go through very long processes and very long obstacles that can slow down works, that can slow down the launch of the partnership and of the collaboration. And this is something that is not always so clear and so understandable for the private sector, that has completely different procedures. if it's able to propose you something on the day one, it's able to start working on this on the day two. For the public bodies, it's not the same thing. So you need to align, as well times, not only goals, but even times, procedures, and working on this. We need, of course, some big reforms related to this, but you need as well to have employees and public servants that are ready to innovate somehow the procedure, that are ready not only to do what they do in their everyday activities, but they have the will to include some innovative procedures, some innovative ways to then implement projects through partnerships.
Oh, yeah, no, very interesting points about, so government bodies, public bodies do have procedures, and this can create very significant inertia in creating partnerships, just getting things done. But it does get very complex when you've got multiple organisations that are trying to join together. And as Gavin was mentioning earlier, the procurement issues can also be very complex. Gavin, John, are there any points you would like to add on in terms of barriers and how to overcome them?
I don't think I have anything to add. Actually, Illyria's conveyed that very accurately. I think pace is a real issue, and I think expectation management is a real issue as well. And I think that my cat's about to interfere with the call. Sorry. The benefits of working from home. I think these are common things, and innovation and that approach to trying something slightly differently is really important. But that managing expectations is a real issue as well, and working at different pace can sometimes cause a lot of issues. So I think early on in the process, trying to be clear about what is achievable within what timescale is really important to managing those expectations and setting a clear path forward for how you do that. And that can be not specifically related to one project. As John's saying, sometimes partnerships based on one project are very limited in their scope, but equally partnerships related to a theme or a topic still need to understand the restrictions that can be placed on the public sector and the comparative lack of agility sometimes when compared to the private sector.
Wonderful. John, anything you want to add on in terms of barriers you've experienced and how you've overcome those?
Yeah, I think in addition to agreeing with what Ilaria and Gavin have already said, I want to point out another barrier, particularly with regards to we as public institutions. Not many people have trust, confidence in public institutions. So establishing a partnership with others, the private sector, non-state actors, and so on, the academia, it is always a struggle to be able to have the trust, to have the confidence of those you are trying to partner with. So as an institution, how transparent you are and how accountable you are will also determine how partners will be willing to partner with you and how partners would actually perceive you as a partner. Another issue or another barrier that I see is I think is it Gavin who mentioned about managing expectations, but also there is another angle to that in the sense that the players in the partnership, because each partner is supposed to bring something to the table, and there are other players, maybe they bring perhaps what is perceived to be more to the table than others. And that can cause maybe some conflicts sometimes, or also some misunderstandings. So I think, again, we need to to ensure that as we go into the partnership, it is very clear what the goals of each partner are and why each partner is entering into that partnership, and also the modus operandi of that partnership to avoid the disappointments, to avoid the conflict. Thank you.
No, thank you, John. Some great insights there, and I agree totally around those issues of the needing to build trust between partners. If you're entering into, a significant partnership is paramount, and yeah, that clearly the issue of having clearly defined and understood expectations. Now this session is going out to quite a wide audience, so I'm going to give you all the opportunity just to maybe give the wider world an idea of partnership opportunities you might see coming down the track, or where you would welcome discussions in the future, without committing you to anything, but it's just an opportunity for you to just let the wider world know something about the opportunities you see. Have you got any thoughts on that?
I can maybe go first and take the easy route there. And I believe the leader was talking about the green print for Glasgow. So we've actually just very publicly stated our ambitions and hopes for partnership. From a resilience climate change perspective, we have an abundance of opportunities in the city, which are, in terms of their size and scope, way beyond something the public sector can deliver in isolation. It's something that we have to do through a variety of investment opportunities, a variety of delivery partners. So we've made it quite clear in our prospectus, in our green print, what it is we're looking to do. And a lot of that is around heat delivery and heat networks and the transformation of heat delivery in the city, which is an enormous undertaking, but it's something that can be a very sound and secure investment for companies for a very, very long time. And it's something that can bring about jobs and economic growth and recovery from COVID. So there's a lot of opportunities in there, and we welcome anyone who wishes to come and talk to us about these projects, about these opportunities. The GREC that I mentioned earlier is one of the opportunities that's there. How do we expand that heat network out beyond where it is currently? But also even right in your house, Richard, in the University of Strathclyde, in the Climate Neutral Innovation District, we have a huge project in the city centre, which brings about many different approaches to dealing with adaptation and mitigation around climate change. And heat networks are part of that. And then with those acting as almost large-scale demonstrators, we then have the remainder of the city, which is part of our local heat and energy efficiency strategy, will look to adopt some of those practices. So there's an abundance of opportunities for partnership, and we're really looking to work with partners that can come and provide the infrastructure that the city needs and work with the city in a way that's mutually beneficial for both parties.
So huge and very long-term opportunities there. Ilaria, would you like to come in on any partnership opportunities you would like to flag?
I think it's a more something I would like to underline is it's more, let's say, a big framework we are working on right now, which is the funding. Actually, all the European country are receiving from the UE for the resilience and recovery plan, the resilience and recovery facility. So this is a big challenge. All the European countries are working on this. We are, as City of Milan, contributing to, like all the other Italian cities, contributing to the Italian plan, the national Italian plan for recovery and resilience after the pandemic. I think that it's a big challenge that involves not only the national government, but as well the local one. The goals that have been set are at the national level, but those goals need to be reached thanks to the implementation of the projects at the local scale. So within this context, I think that partnerships are a crucial aspect. We need to have as well the private sector on board. We have this big deadline in front of us, which is the one of 2026. So with several projects, several big projects, that require a lot of investment, not only by the public body, but as well by the private sector. So just, you know, a brief reflection on how we need to and work better on the topic of partnership and collaboration within this framework, within the framework of the Recovery and Resilience Funds of the Next Generation EU.
Okay, no, thank you for that, Ilaria. And John, are there partnership opportunities you would like to flag to the wider world?
Yes, indeed. The Lilongwe City Council has recently launched a 5-year strategic plan up to 2025. And in this plan, we have identified some transformative investments that we need for our city to be able to transform the city, adapt better to climate change, and also to build the resilience for our population. I think one of the areas that I would like to flag out is here in Malawi, here in Lilongwe, every day of the year, almost, we get 12 hours of sunlight. And yet, only 60% of our population has access to electricity. And of that, only 7% are able to use it for cooking. So we have a huge energy deficiency in the midst of having 12 hours of sunlight, sunshine every day. So we think this is really a prime area for partnership to harness solar energy, wind energy, and other renewables to meet the energy needs of our city. Linked to that, I already talked about the issue of food security, where our markets are poorly equipped to, because most of the food in our city comes through municipal markets, but these municipal markets don't have infrastructure for cooling and for prolonging the life of the food. So we want to invest in a new generation of markets that we call energy facilitated marketplaces, which will use renewables, especially solar, to be able to introduce cooling systems in our markets so that post-harvest losses can be reduced. Currently, we think over 30% of our food goes to waste because there are no cooling systems in our markets. So this investment in a new generation of markets will actually be transformative and mean a lot, not just to access to food by urban populations, but also issues of rural farmers, because they're the ones who grow this food, improving their incomes from this. So this is really one key area that we as a state council want really to push forward for partnerships. Then we have the issue of public transport. We really don't have a functional public transport system in our city. And then the issues of use of private cars and so on. This is an area that we want to work in and reduce use of of private cars and focus on either walking or cycling and the use of public transports. I talked already about the issue of solid waste. This is an area that we are looking for partnerships, both in terms of transporting the waste, but also waste disposal. We are looking for partnerships to develop an engineered landfill site for our waste in the city. And finally, I think there are great opportunities in terms of building technologies for construction of buildings in our city. We need partnerships to bring in greener technologies for the construction industry in our city, which is also contributing a lot to climate change and also, I think, reducing the resilience of our city to the impacts of climate change. So those are the opportunities that I would flag for partnerships going forward.
Thank you, Johnson. Very, fascinating partnership opportunities there, and you know, and I'm sure those will be very interesting to some of the organisations listening today. I mean, you've mentioned some areas of really quite critical city infrastructure where, you know, Lilongwe would welcome discussions on potential partnerships to deliver those. So that's been fascinating. I mean, I'd like to thank all the panelists today, Gavin, Ilaria and John, for providing some really powerful and relevant insights into how they are gaining value from partnerships right now and look to gain value in the future. And for your, you know, sharing, you know, what is a really quite intelligent and sophisticated approach you're taking to developing partnerships in the interests of your cities. So no, thank you for sharing those thoughts. And from, you know, from the point of view of Strathclyde, AIG and Wood, you know, we look forward as partners working and developing that partnership into the future. So thank you all for your time and your thoughts today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Richard, Ilaria, John, and Gavin. Your examples of partnership and needs of the city and resilience, I'm sure resonate with many of the people who are watching, and I'm sure it will generate a great discussion both amongst the team, but also with other new stakeholders and new cities as they come on board. We now turn our eye to finance, which is such a critical issue for all our cities. And we are very fortunate to have two experts to assist us in this discussion. First, I'd like to introduce Greg Clark, Group Advisor on Future Cities and New Industries for HSBC, and then Heather Taylor, Chief Financial Officer for the City of Toronto, who will discuss how we can partner and utilize finance to achieve our climate goals and resilience. Greg, thank you so much for joining us today. I'll turn the floor over to you, and we appreciate any advice or any thoughts you might have on resilience and finance and creative ways to finance goals. Thank you.
Well, Paul, firstly, thank you very much for the invitation to contribute here. And I'd like to thank AIG, Wood, UNIDO, and Strathclyde University for the invitation to do this. And what a fascinating conversation it's been so far. Now, my take on this question really goes like this. We're entering the 5th decade of the century of the city. And this challenge of planetary future, climate emergency, the resilience quest, is one that is not just changing the way our cities are oriented and managed, but it's also changing the way that we have to finance them. To put it at its most simple, as more people move to cities and as cities become the fundamental form of human settlement, the business models of how our cities operate and are financed also needs to change. At the same time, the arrival of new digital technologies alongside the planetary imperatives creates opportunities for us to build new operational models for our cities, which in turn create new financial models for how they work. So let's try to make this a little bit simple, if we may. I think there are basically 5 ways that we can finance the decarbonisation and the resilience of our cities going forward. And actually, these ways of financing our cities are quite familiar to people. It's just that each of them needs to be strengthened and accelerated at this time. The first one, of course, is that cities should be able to generate their own revenues. And in many parts of the world, we see cities that have a strong capability to generate their own taxes, make their own charges, operate their own services that are able to generate revenues from users, riders, and others. And through that, to be able to engage, as it were, in a self-financing approach to their future. Now, we know that as cities become more sustainable and more resilient, and they see a shift, for example, towards much more energy efficient buildings or towards public transport systems that have high capacity, that cities are more able to generate these revenues. So if you like, the path to sustainability and resilience increases the possibility of generating value and improving in the long term the value of our buildings and our systems as well as they become more efficient. As we increase the life cycles of our infrastructures, they are able to retain value for longer periods of time. So as circularity becomes a new way of thinking about our railways, our water systems, our energy systems, our waste systems, as well as our built environment, then the whole concept of residual value becomes something that is very important to the balance sheet of cities. So over the next decade, we expect to see new and additional ways in which cities can combine action for the environment with generating more revenues. These will be things like congestion charging, road user charging, new kinds of requirements around parking of vehicles, subscriptions and revenues related to the electrification of infrastructure, and many, many more. So we do expect cities to become more self-financing and therefore to become more bankable. Now, the second way in which cities can finance the journey into sustainability and resilience, of course, is to receive what we might call transfer payments from higher tiers of government, whether those are states or provinces or regional governments in some countries, whether they're national or federal governments in others. The ability of cities to attract long-term transfer payments is also an important part of how tax revenues are recycled between the different tiers of government that we find. Now, increasingly, as cities pursue strategies for sustainability and resilience, they help our national, federal, provincial, state, and regional governments to achieve policy objectives that would not otherwise be achieved. Those might be objectives in relation to air quality and public health, or they might be objectives in relation to the saving of costs through the improvement in the way that water, energy, and waste are managed, reducing, as it were, leakage, spillage, and other things. They may well be that cities are able to contribute much more to national housing agendas by refurbishing and retrofitting buildings to make them cleaner, greener, and more efficient. There are multiple ways in which cities can help higher tiers of government to achieve their policy objectives by focusing on decarbonisation and resilience as core attributes at the local level. So this should increase the ability of our cities to attract transfer payments from those higher tiers of government. Now, the third way in which cities may be able to finance these things into the future is by engaging with development finance institutions. Of course, we're all familiar with the role of the World Bank in Europe, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and the European Investment Bank. We know about the Asia Development Bank, the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, and so many more. But increasingly, the tools and techniques of development finance are also being used in many other countries that are not covered by these multilateral entities. One of them, of course, is the UK, where I'm speaking to you from today. Now, development finance is very interesting because it helps us to make the markets work in terms of the connection of private sector capital with public policies and public purposes. Let me give you some examples. Development finance institutions can, of course, engage in issuing their own bonds. And by issuing their bonds, they can tap the capital markets for activities that will achieve ESG, that's obviously environmental, social, and governance objectives. In other words, achieving some of the appetite that capital players have. And by issuing bonds, this is a way, as it were, of translating some of that capital appetite into local development projects, whether they be transport, whether they be infrastructure, logistics and utilities, whether they be real estate, or whether they be other kinds of amenities, including hospitals, universities, and so much more. Many of the development finance institutions are now raising substantial amounts of money for the decarbonisation of our cities and their systems, and our cities need to be able to engage with them. So they're providers of additional capital, sometimes in the form of direct investment or lending, and sometimes, of course, as part of a blended finance model, which I'll come on to talk about a little bit more in a minute. However, there's also the role that development finance institutions play in things like the provision of guarantees, revenue guarantees, or indeed even risk guarantees around certain projects that have new business models within them. As I said a few minutes ago, as we shift towards more resilient and decarbonized cities, we change the operational models of how our utilities, our infrastructure, and our real estate work, often creating new kinds of value, but not necessarily in the same predictable ways that they were created before. Let's take one kind of example. If we improve the number of people in any city that are engaging in active travel and using walking and cycling as part of their journey on a daily basis, even if they're connecting with a public transport system for part of it as well, we may have the beneficial effect of improving public health. So we will discover that savings occur, for example, in the healthcare and medical budgets, even though the activity has occurred in the transport budgets. And so this is one example of how activity in one sector of urban governance can have benefits in another, and therefore changes the financial model that needs to be used. Development finance institutions are very good at understanding these complex value creation models that occur and using things like guarantees, interest rate discounts, investment, for example, in project preparation as ways of making this market work more efficiently, creating greater bankability and investability into these kinds of programs. Now, a third or a fourth way, excuse me, of financing the decarbonization resilience of our cities is, of course, new generation public-private partnerships, blended finance solutions, or what we might call sometimes joint ventures. This is where essentially we're using public assets combined with private capital and putting together, as it were, a business model where a lot of the capital, the risk, and the skillful aspects of financial and project management are provided by the private sector, but the public sector retains the ownership of a portion of the assets or all of the assets in the very long term, and at the same time helps to deliver policies which encourage citizens to use the infrastructures, makes it difficult for those infrastructures to face uncertainty or unnecessary competition, and perhaps provides, for example, a revenue guarantee for the providers of the services. So it's public sector and private sector working together using private finance and public assets to create a new kind of business model around how these things work. Now, a very good example of this approach in terms of a PPP model is to think, for example, about how we use public land, which often in our cities is suboptimally used, and we combine that with private capital to create new kinds of facilities, net zero hospitals, student housing, university campuses, and other things. Or we take, for example, public housing and public buildings, and we apply private finance to the application of retrofitting them or repurposing them. Now, these kinds of approaches create the opportunity for a kind of win-win, a win for the planet and a win for people, but also a win for the public sector that sees more capital and a win for the private sector that sees a steady revenue return from the investment that they've made. So this is the fourth example. Now, the fifth example, of course, is that many of the things that are done to help our cities decarbonize and become more resilient is done by the private sector itself. Telecom companies, energy companies, waste companies, transportation providers, the private sector real estate firms and real estate investors, all of them are subject to the rules that are created by city governments, regional, state and provincial governments at the subnational level. And governments have an opportunity using their policy approach. They're policy instruments, things like land use planning or car parking policies, or other policies that relate to how roads and other forms of transport are used, or policies that relate, for example, to air quality and environmental improvements. Public authorities can create a positive policy environment in which the private sector can innovate in a much more accelerated way, creating momentum around decarbonisation to really produce positive outcomes that are wholly financed by the private sector. A good example of this occurs in the construction industry, when city governments take the approach of saying that they will only have construction in their city which is net zero in terms of fossil fuels, and of course is net zero in terms of the inherited carbon that's within buildings. When city governments and other governments create very progressive policies here, the private sector is forced to innovate, and as a consequence is able to build new business models around net zero construction, net zero buildings, and other things, and as a result produce models that then give them a competitive advantage in other markets. So there's also a win-win available here. More progressive policies by city governments and other subnational governments can induce changes of behavior in the private sector that not only are profitable then in situ, but also give those private sector players an advantage in the competition to enter new markets with a new kind of sustainability credential involved. So these are 5 examples of how we can finance decarbonisation and resilience within our cities. And over the next decade or two, of course, we'll see many more innovations in this space begin to occur. Some of those innovations will involve new kinds of taxes and charges. Some of them will involve new ways of understanding the business model. For example, if we want to decarbonize housing by creating residential homes that are much more energy efficient, should it be the occupier or the owner of those properties who pays the cost? And can we develop new business models that allow them both to contribute in one way or another? For example, a decarbonisation mortgage for an owner-occupier, or perhaps a tenant tariff for those who are simply in a building for a shorter period of time and not necessarily the owner. I think we will see a lot of innovations in this space over the next period of time. Let me finish my remarks by saying that all of these new ways of financing the decarbonisation and the resilience of our cities are aided by a few obvious fundamental points. Firstly, city leaders that are able to set out a compelling proposition about how decarbonisation and resilience will occur, how the benefits will be shared and how the costs and risks will be shared, seems a very important aspect of creating a consensus and a coalition, as it were, of those who really want to make it happen. Secondly, having a clear understanding of how the transition risks will be addressed is very important in terms of gaining the support both from the private sector and the citizens around the decarbonisation and resilience process. And thirdly, it's of course essential to create a level playing field so that all private sector actors and financial actors are operating within the same rules as one another. This is very important for inducing some of the innovations I've been talking about. So I think that there are reasons to be optimistic about how we will finance decarbonisation and resilience in our cities into the future. But it's also, I think, incumbent upon all of us to take the responsibility of trying to do the things that have proved to be difficult in the past in order to create demonstration projects that will be able to move to scale in the future, creating, as it were, an unstoppable momentum and demonstrating to those aspects of the market that are not yet confident that we can do good business, create sound financial models, and produce sustainable returns from the decarbonisation and the resilience of our cities into the future. thank you very much for inviting me to participate. I hope that I've contributed something to the discussion about how we finance these important journeys that our cities are now on.
Greg, thank you so much. That was a terrific contribution. And your 5 examples, I'm sure, will resonate and be very, very helpful both to the cities we've been working with to date and that spoke today, but also to the cities that will be listening and to the municipalities that are moving forward. I think your message is both optimistic and very realistic. And I think totally agree with you. What resonated to me was what you said about the how at the end, that will be critical and important to have that described. So can't thank you enough. Really appreciate your involvement, and we look forward to working with you more in the future.
Me too. Thank you very much, Paul. It's a great pleasure.
Hello, Heather. Thank you so much. We're looking forward to discussing finance with you and appreciate you joining us today. We were really hoping that perhaps, we know you've been doing some real pioneering and interesting innovative work in Canada and in Toronto, and you've been a terrific spokesperson across Ontario on ESG and other thoughts. So we were hoping perhaps you could share with both the cities that are involved in today's discussion, but also others who are watching, any of your lessons learned or best practices from Toronto, and any encouragement you may have for them for financing going forward. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Paul, and I'm thrilled to have an opportunity to chat with you. I'm really proud of the path that Toronto is on, but more importantly, the commitment that we've made to ourselves, but publicly, to support the efforts towards climate, social issues, and obviously governance. The municipalities in general are actually really well positioned to combat ESGs from the perspective of the fact that we are the implementers. We're the implementers of national and subnational policies. And so we're really left being accountable. And truly, citizens are the ones that see what municipalities truly deliver. And so when you think about that and you contextualize it from the perspective of being able to demonstrate not only commitments, but accountability, I think that's super important. So one of the things that we did even before I joined the city is Toronto was the second municipality in Canada to issue a green bond. And we have been actually the only Canadian municipality to continue to issue green bonds on an annual basis. But what happened is that we started taking a look at the markets and we started talking to investors. And what we really did acknowledge is the fact that the capital market community, our bankers, our investors were really looking for more than just a green bond program. There was a very distinct opportunity to pursue a sustainable finance model. And so what we did, even within COVID, we created a social debenture framework, and that gave investors the opportunity to not only look at the city from a perspective of a green bond opportunity, but a social bond opportunity. And so under our sustainable financing framework, we now give investors flexibility to support programs that have social outcomes or programs that have environmental outcomes. And I'll be honest with you, the response has been overwhelming. It really did validate the fact that we saw the opportunity to create an ESG framework, to become more accountable in the ESG world, and really to demonstrate our commitment. But we did it in a way that we really do hope other municipalities can actually follow. We are the only Canadian municipality to have done a social bond. We're the only Canadian government to have done a social bond, but we do know, and we are committed to it being the way of the future. It really is something that is just a stepping stone. And when I look at other activities that the city has embarked on, we were the first Canadian government to include climate change in our financial statement disclosure. We're the first Canadian government to issue an ESG annual report. And the reason that I'm highlighting we're the first Canadian government is I'm really hoping that through our leadership, that other municipalities, other governments will look and say, it's not that hard to do. We're creating something that's easy to copy, easy to emulate, and easy to build on. And truthfully, if someone can come in and build on it, we will probably look to them for ways that we can improve what we're doing. And so when you think about, you asked about financing, but I look at financing as being the umbrella of how we are using our financial information to be a vehicle of communication about what we're committed to, what we're actually doing, but how the public can hold us accountable. Because at the end of the day, we are the stewards of the public purse. And so those are a few opportunities that we took and we're pursuing on an annual basis. So we issued our first social bond, I'm super excited to say, during a global pandemic, and the response by the market was completely overwhelming, and it validated what we're doing is the right thing. And I look now and say that it's part of our annual debenture program. We issue $1 billion every year, and part of that is a social bond and part of that is a green bond. In addition to that, we're also creating partnerships, and the partnerships that we are currently developing, one is with an organization called Mars, and they have a program called Mission to Mars. And Mission to Mars is a way for them to rapidly implement climate change, innovative technologies. Being a government, obviously procurement is an important vehicle to demonstrate transparency, value for money, but I'm really excited about a partnership that the City of Toronto is creating with Mission to Mars to expedite and accelerate our ability to tap into innovative initiatives around climate change. And so once again, it's looking beyond the traditional frameworks of financing so that we can truly tackle climate change and social issues in ways that, you know, are unprecedented. I would think and I hope that the COVID pandemic has shown us truly the value of collaboration and how successful we can be through partnerships that are unprecedented. So those are just a few things. Happy to elaborate a little bit more if you feel I might have hit on some points that maybe excite you or that you think that other municipalities may have questions on.
Heather, thank you so much. I can't tell you, that was very inspiring, and having worked with you in the past and been a big fan of what you've been doing in Toronto, especially around moving ESG dialogue forward and being one of the first cities or the first Canadian city to actually create an ESG report, we've been a big fan. So what you discussed today was really terrific and quite helpful. And I think I think the cities will, both those that have been participating to date in our efforts, but also those that are watching, will take away that opportunity to learn from you. As you said, it's great to know the way you phrased it, that it's something they could learn from and that they could also hopefully help build the model. I give you incredible credit for the social and green bond activity during the pandemic. That was both innovative and brave. But thank you. I think we'll probably have feedback from the cities, hoping to learn more. But this has been terrific. The one thing I would love to know more about, or we would all in a partnership love to learn more about, but maybe it's better for another day when we have more time, is more about your Mars partnership, because the idea of partnering and seeking those innovative solutions is something that we're really trying to drive forward with the cities to date. And a lot of that has also come from discussions with you and with Melissa Ferreira from your group. You guys have really helped us a great deal. So I thank you. Well, I would now like to introduce two inspiring leaders and speakers in sustainability for our closing remarks. First, I'd like to introduce Jennifer Waldner, Chief Sustainability Officer for AIG. And then after we hear from Jen, we will have final closing remarks from Ann Rosenberg, Senior Vice President for Sustainability at Wood. Jen, thank you so much for joining us. You're always an inspiring speaker, and we appreciate this very much. I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Paul. This has been a very motivating discussion about the power of partnership and promoting effective collaboration to achieve our climate change goals, to ultimately realize UN SDG 17, partnering for sustainable development. Partnership is a linchpin, and as our speakers have described, despite the associated challenges, it is key to our success. At AIG, we've made community resilience and partnering for change one of the key pillars in our sustainability strategy as we work to support our community's ability to respond to, withstand, and recover from adverse situations. Our partnership with Wood, UNIDO, the University of Strathclyde, and our city partners is an excellent example of how we help to make these efforts a reality. And it's particularly gratifying to see how the partnership has evolved from its establishment with Wood in 2015 to the expansion to include UNIDO and Strathclyde in 2019 and 2020 respectively, and now further expansion in 2021 to include these exceptional Global North and Global South cities. As we head towards COP26, we agree that it's imperative to partner effectively to identify and implement affordable, accessible, and scalable solutions. We heard from the feedback provided by Deputy Director General Hiroshi how important resilience is to our partner cities. Accordingly, we've formed this expanding city network to share knowledge and best practices and ways that make the most of available resources. Through the examples noted by Susan and the other city representatives, we've established a greater understanding of what is already being developed to tackle climate-related challenges, and that we must continue to build on this momentum, recognizing that these solutions can be improved and scaled across cities globally. As Heather and Greg note, cities face acute financial challenges. In response, we are creating innovative solutions and ways to partner to address these critical issues, including support through our financial knowledge and experience. In the spirit of partnership, I now turn it over to Ann, who represents Wood and has been a terrific partner in so many ways. Ann, the floor is yours.
First of all, thank you so much for an amazing conversation that we have had today as we are leading up to COP26, which is actually today only in 2 weeks. Talking about resiliency and the future of cities is going to be one of the key topics when we go to COP. And that's why it is so exciting that we have had this roundtable going on today as a leading up to COP. First of all, I want to thank you, Jen. I want to thank the amazing partnership that we have with AIG, the amazing partnership we have with UNIDO and Strathclyde University and all the cities. I would like to mention that this partnership actually, it started before I actually joined Wood. We have actually had a partnership with AIG for many, many years. And when I joined Wood beginning of the year and I got introduced to this amazing work that has been going on in building up a framework collaboration around resiliency, I was so thrilled and excited and also excited that I'm allowed to be part of it and also bringing it to COP and going forward with all the work that we're going to do together. I will say, I know the partnership, of course, not just started this year, as mentioned, but there was also some great announcements at World Economic Forum. And we have also had a number of partner announcements coming out. So this is the beginning of a long, long journey that we have in front of us. And by saying this, as we all know, when we go to COP, that COP is both around net zero, but it's also about the race to resilience. It is a topic both in week 1 and week 2 of COP. And I'm excited that we are going to host a huge workshop at the Woodhouse doing the second week. So this is going to be great, but again, it is the beginning of a long partnership where we will see how we together can build on the partnership and build some more resilient cities going forward. As we are going into COP, I would say that there's a lot of expectations to COP. But one thing, which is a key thing for me to be part of COP, is that it is a beginning of something much bigger. A lot of commitments. Also, the partnership that we are doing together is a big commitment. So it's about the solutions that we are going to bring forward. And we cannot forget one thing. In the end, it's not just about being a resilient city, but it's also mainly about the people in the city, to build up resilient cities for the people in the cities around the world. So therefore you can say it is an exciting time. It's also a difficult time we have in front of us. Why you also are seeing such a big commitment. Thousands of people are going to travel into Glasgow to be part of COP26. But we are already beginning to talk about COP27 that will take place in Africa, where resiliency is going to become even a much bigger topic. So as I mentioned, the fruitful partnership that we started for some years ago are very timely, and it's a very important partnership to go forward. So I cannot stress the uniqueness of our partnership that we have together with AIG, the University of Glasgow, and UNIDO. On behalf of Wood, I'm really proud of it. For me, the most important thing for the work that I do every single day is to be able to contribute to build a better world that we had before. And I think resiliency is something that we all have a whole new understanding about what that means as we are coming out of COVID. And now where we need to tackle the climate crisis, we really need to understand how to build resilient cities. And that's why I'm super thankful for all the cities who has been part of this roundtable and who will be with us at COP. There's a lot of work in front of us that we need to do, but we can only do together. So thank you so much. And I look forward to see you at COP, whatever you are there in person. You're welcome to be part of the Woodhouse. The Woodhouse, together with our partner, both University of Glasgow and UNIDO and AIG, is going to be there in person together with many of the cities and together with many of you. It's open for 2 weeks from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 in the evening. We are running many sessions every single day. So this is an open invitation for all of you. And I know we have a dedicated day which is all about the workshop that we have together. So thank you so much. And thank you for this incredible partnership. And by this, I would like to hand over to Paul.
Anne, thank you so much for your inspiring words. You always do inspire us and encourage us. Thank you also for your assistance in developing the partnerships and the framework to date. We couldn't have done it without you and the Wood team. Thank you also for your vision as we head towards COP26. I think it's a very exciting time and an exciting time to bring together the spirit of partnership and UN SDG 17, as you mentioned. Also wanted to thank everyone, all the other partners, Strathclyde, Richard, thank you so much for leading such a great conversation today with the cities. Thank you to the cities for joining. Thank you, UNIDO, for such a terrific job and opportunity and for being such a terrific partner. I'd also like to say thank you, Jen and Anne, for your closing remarks and pointing out the fact that this is just the beginning. We look forward to partnering with all the cities that are watching, that are involved, and going forward. The partner cities to date have been terrific and quite helpful. Thank you to all the speakers today, and we look forward to partnering with you in the future.
Thank you, Paul, for a very productive session. Many thanks to all the guests for the active and informative debate. I'm sure that we will continue discussions during our upcoming event at COP26, where AIG, Wood Group, the Institute for Future Cities at the University of Strathclyde, and UNIDO will partner again to advance the theme of urban sustainability. We're now reaching the end of this year's event. Please stay with us for today's wrap-up and closing remarks.